Hi, my name is Nick from EvolvingPixels.com, and I'm going to show you how to build a raw CSS website in under 10 minutes. Let's get started. Let's go to Site, New Sites. Name your site anything you want. I'll call mine Nick's Website. You also insert your web address there as well. We do not want to use the server technology. We want to edit local copies on my machine. Let's create a root folder. I'm going to create mine on my desktop. We'll call it Nick's root folder. This is where I'm going to dump all my HTML, my images, and whatnot. It's very important folder to have. We do not want to connect to a remote server, and we would like this finished. Now let's make an HTML sheet. Go to File, Save As. We're going to save this so we don't forget. So Nick's root folder. I'm going to call this index.html. Now we want to attach a CSS style sheet, so we'll go over here in the CSS styles and click this plus button here, new CSS rule, selector type compound. We're going to make a container. We'll call it container, and rule definition, we put a new style sheet file, press OK. Takes us to our root folder that we made. I want to make a new folder for this and call this CSS layout. And we want to save the file as CSS layout.css. Save. You can define the container in this region, but let's do this manually. I prefer to do it manually, so let's just press OK here. Let's go to our CSS layout. Add a pound in front of here to define that container. And let's start with our container. Width will be 1000 pixels, semicolon to close that out. Return, we want the height to be at auto, semicolon to close that out. Now margin, notice that when I'm typing a submenu comes up here, it predicts what you're going to input as far as the code. So we just go to margin left here, click. We want that to be at auto, semicolon, return, margin right, we want at auto as well too. Keeping this at auto will have the container centered at all times, and that's very important. Let's start writing our divs for content. Press pound, we'll make a header div. We'll call it header. We'll open curly bracket, return. We'll have the header width at 1000 pixels. Very important that you define the width, especially with CSS, that it's in pixels. I prefer pixels. You could change it to something else, but I use pixels. We want the height of the header to be 200 pixels. And we want the background color just temporarily to be a different one, just so we could see it in the design. And we want this to float to the left within the container. This helps organize the divs into one region of the container. So also we want to make sure we semicolon to close that definition out. And we want to close this out with a right curly bracket. Let's define a navbar div. We press the pound and title it navbar. Open curly bracket, return. We'll have the width of the navbar 1000 pixels, semicolon. We'll have the height at 50 pixels, px, semicolon, return. And we want this background color temporarily just to be something different so we know where it is being placed in the design. And then we want this also to float to the left. Close curly bracket. Let's make a div for the content. Pound, name this content, open curly bracket. We'll have the content at 1000, width at 1000 pixels. We'll have the height at 500 pixels. And we want the background color. If we don't define it, it'll be white. We can keep it white. That's perfectly fine. And we'll have it at a float of left. Let's go close curly bracket. And let's make a footer. Pound, footer, space, curly bracket, left curly bracket. Define the width at 1000 pixels. And we'll define the height at 50 pixels. And we'll also give it a background color just temporarily if something different. We'll change that in another tutorial. And we want this to float to the left and close curly bracket. Go to File, Save. Now let's move to our source code. Right here by body, we want to go right under body and insert our container. So we do a greater than bracket here, and we want to insert the container div, so we type in div space ID. Notice that there's a menu here as well predicting what I'm putting in. It's selected ID. We press enter and it brings up our divs here. We want to insert the container div here. Less than bracket, greater than bracket, backslash automatically closes the div for you. We want to place our other divs within the container. So let's return this div down a little bit and let's start inserting our header. Div space ID, enter, header, close bracket, open backslash. There's our header. Greater than div space ID, enter. Select our nav bar, close that bracket. Greater than bracket, backslash completes the div. Backslash, let's insert our content div. Greater than bracket, div space ID, enter. Select content, close that tag. Greater than bracket, backslash completes the end tag. And now let's do the footer. Greater than div space ID, enter, footer, close, open, greater than, and backslash completes the div. Now, if you notice, now we have, when we click into the design, this is our header. Any content in this div, in between these tags here, will show up in the header. Any content here in the nav bar, title this nav bar, will show up in the nav bar. And any content that you type in or place here will be content, as you can see here. And as well, in between these tags, you have the footer. Footer content. We could add a color for a background real quick here. Just click out here, we'll go to page properties. Background color, let's just give that a gray. Apply. OK. And let's just quickly apply a background color in our content. I switch to the CSS. Background color. Select white. Save that. Save your HTML. Now let's preview this in a browser. File, preview in browser. I prefer Firefox. And there you have it, a CSS website in under 10 minutes. Part 2 of this is inserting graphics. You can view that at evolvingpixels.com as well.